Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a fresh new episode of Knock Off the Perch, a Manchester United podcast. Today, we will be talking about the Munich Air Disaster. It was very recently the 67th anniversary of the very sad day for the club, which left a long-lasting impact. It is one of the dark days of Manchester United history. It was the day when we lost the lives of 23 people, eight United players, some of them journalists, and some staff as well. It's a really sad day in our Manchester United history. But yeah, it is something which we feel that every United fan should know about, and maybe the younger generation, they do know about the incident, but they don't know the lasting impact it had on the club.
Yeah.
How have you been, Araj?
No, I think you put it very well. And while it's a very sad day for all United fans, it's also a little bit of a inspirational story of what happened after that. How the team overcame all the odds and over the next 10 years or so built the club that it is built. And Sir Matt Busby was central to a lot of that. So we will talk about that as well. And you rightly put it, the club puts a lot of emphasis on this with the clock around, with the mural at the stadium outside, sort of talking about it. So people know that this will always be part of our history. We will remember the Busby Babes who passed away then. And it's a source of inspiration for United players, United fans, everybody who works for Manchester United. So very, very important to talk about it. And yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, how I think a good place to start would be if we talk about the day itself when United were part of the European Cup and they were returning after a victory against Red Star Belgrade.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned that it's an interesting story why we took that flight on that day.
Yeah, exactly. So, in the lead up to the European Cup quarterfinal game, we had played a club in Prague in the previous round, and we had defeated them to qualify for the quarterfinals. And while we were returning from Prague after the previous round, I think we were supposed to be on a plane, but fog over England prevented the squad from traveling back to Manchester directly. They flew to Amsterdam, and then from there they took a ferry to England and then a train back to Manchester. And the players were very tired. 3 days later, they had a game against Birmingham City. They drew 3-3. And this was all playing in the background of the decision making on how to come back after the game against Red Star Belgrade from then Yugoslavia, now Serbia. And they decided to charter a British European Airways plane for this one. So that is the entire starting point of all of this.
Wow.
And obviously it was not easy to travel back from Belgrade to Manchester with the technology at that point in time, with the fuel capacity, efficiencies, etc. So they decided to stop over in Munich for refueling. And once they did refuel, it was a snowy day. It was heavily snowing. They attempted a takeoff two times earlier and couldn't succeed. And there was a bit of a chatter to say whether we stay the night in Munich or whether we attempt to take off again. But I think there was a little bit of a logistical decision from airlines side as well. And we obviously don't know the details of what happened inside of inside the minds of the decision makers. But there was a thought of, to lead to a lot of delays, etc. So let's try it once more. And when the third takeoff was being attempted is when the incident happened. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, talking about the aftermath of the incident, like, some stories do come to thought. I believe the goalkeeper, Harry Gregg, who was part of the accident, he
yeah,
became an instant hero because he actually pulled out a lot of survivors, teammates and passengers from the wreckage. This included actually a pregnant woman with a
yeah,
baby, and despite his trauma, he actually was in the matchday squad just 2 weeks later. And
yeah,
in fact, even though we lost about eight players, the significance of the next game was not lost on any of the players. They knew we fielded a makeshift team in the FA Cup game that just 13 days later and won that game 4-0 as well with
yeah,
the whole Old Trafford crowd. United will never die, United will never die, and that does come to us, and we see the resilience of the team, we see the strength of the team, and what's good to also note is the kind of support United got at that point from
yeah.
various clubs. So that was a very good thing to see as well.
No, the moment you said United will not die, I have a little bit of a goosebump moment myself. So I can imagine what the players must have felt, the kind of support that the United squad spoke about. And I think when he was speaking about Harry Gregg, I was reading about Sir Bobby Charlton's memoir from the
Mhm.
incident. And he says that, the mood in the aircraft was pretty good. People were joking around, the players were joking around in the lead up to that, and nobody was really, too worried about the snow situation, etc. And he says that I remember us hitting a house, the plane hitting
Mm.
a house in the periphery, and then he going unconscious. And his next memory is Harry Gregg pulling him out. So,
Mm.
fortunately, he only had minor injuries, and he went on to become the great player he is. And we'll talk about that when we talk a little bit about our comeback story from that. But yeah, it just is a event that very sad for United at that point in time. But there are stories of support from some of the other clubs as well. Uh, let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of clubs showed a lot of class around that time. I think Real Madrid being the primary example, they offered their best player of all time, arguably Alfredo Di Stefano, and he himself wanted to join United in order to help the rebuild, but sadly due to the FA regulations, that move didn't quite materialize, and Real Madrid actually went ahead and won the European Cup final that year in
Yeah,
1958, and they did dedicate the victory to Manchester United and as well as donated all the trophy money to United, to United as well. And in the words of Santiago Bernabeu, he also said that Manchester United will be the greatest club in the world again, and we are gonna help them do that. So Real Madrid's efforts. We should also talk about Liverpool's tribute as well because their legendary manager Bill Shankly at that point of time he mentioned that he urged his board to do everything possible to help United. He also went on to tell the fans and the other clubs across England, and they led the efforts to do that to raise funds for all the victim's family. So that was a very classy gesture. And our noisy neighbors, Manchester City,
yeah,
they were also very gracious and very classy in their tributes. Sadly, one of the people who actually passed away in that accident was their FA Cup winning goalkeeper called Frank Swift, who had actually become a journalist. He
hmm,
also passed away in the crash. And City, after in just the aftermath of this incident, they offered a lot of players, youth and reserve players to help them continue playing in the league. And actually, there's a tradition which is followed till date. Every year on 6th of 1958, at the Munich Memorial, there's always a city scarf, a singular city blue scarf, which is also, presented at the
yeah,
Munich Memorial clock at Old Trafford every 6th February. So I thought that was, and these weren't the only clubs, of course. AC Milan wore black armbands at the European club.
yeah.
Sheffield Wednesday, in our inventory in that plane were a lot of our third kits. I think all of our third kits were in that inventory, and they
Okay,
also got destroyed. So Sheffield Wednesday actually let United use their kit in one of the FA Cup matches against Arsenal. I thought that was a very,
yeah,
touching gesture. Our very next match was against Nottingham Forest, and
yeah,
they were at this point of time leading some sort of protest against FA,
hmm,
but they withdrew that protest because they recognized the occasion. They recognized that it isn't about them anywhere. So they were going to forfeit the match, and they,
yeah,
They could have demanded, United forfeit the match, but they actually went ahead and withdrew any protest as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, I thought these were very good stories and showed the humanity side of football, that it isn't just barbarism and hooliganism,
yeah.
but at times of need, other clubs do come together and make it a city united.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot of times, and at times like this is really when the camaraderie between the squads, between the club owners, etc., really comes to the forefront. That while on the pitch it is about being competitive, getting one over the others, but off the pitch, I think there's a lot of support that goes around, and this is one great example of that. And from there, talking about how this United squad went on to perform comeback over the next 10 years. You spoke about the fact that 13 days later we went on to play a game, won that, and at that point in time, Sir Matt Busby was obviously severely injured. In fact, we were discussing off the air how there were two times that it seemed that he's very close to passing away, and which is where even the image that we have, it reads hope is fading for Matt. So obviously it was a very difficult time for United then, and Jimmy Murphy, the assistant manager, who was not with this squad because he was leading another part of the squad for another game, he led the team for the remainder
Yeah,
of the season, and the team went on to reach the FA Cup final. So that itself, with the players from the academy, etc., this itself speaks about the fact, about the resilience of the squad. Then obviously I think when leading up to the incident, we were going for our third league title in a row, having won the previous 2 seasons. I think we were 5 or 6 points behind Wolverhampton Wanderers at that point in time, but with the squad depleted, we went on to lose a few games and ended up ninth that season. And after that, it was all about resurgence in different shapes and form. We had our peaks, we had our troughs through the years. The very next year we did finish second again, only 6 points behind the eventual winners. And we continued to try and rebuild the squad. In 61 we signed George Best, in 62 we signed Dennis Law, and then 63 was a little bit of a pivotal moment for this squad, where although we finished 19th, just two places above relegation at that point in time, it was a 22 team league. So 20th, 21st, and 22nd used to get relegated, and we finished 19th that season. But we also won the FA Cup, so there was this hope that this squad can go and win things, and that was a little bit of a moment for this squad to come together, having won a trophy and get going. 64th, as a result of that, we finished second, and 65 we won our first league after the incident, and Dennis Law went on to win the Ballon d'Or. 66th, as a result of finishing first, we qualified for the European Cup, reached the semi-final again, and in 66 England also won the World Cup with Sir Bobby Charlton winning the Ballon d'Or that season. And 67 we won the league again, so that this squad was now reaching its prime. And 68 the resurgence and the comeback was complete with Sir Matt Busby leading this squad to win the European Cup again. George Best wins the Ballon d'Or this year. Bobby Charlton scores twice against Benfica in the final. We win the final. Everybody runs to Sir Matt Busby, Jimmy Murphy, and I think that that's
yeah,
a great comeback story for this United squad, and an inspiration for fans, inspiration for the team members on what is possible.
yeah. I mean, somehow shaped how United does things as well, because as soon as the incident happened, Matt Busby and Jamie Murphy, they were focused on with scouting new talent, but scouting new talent within the youth as well. So that also became one of the pillar of how we go ahead and work out specific positions in our, we have the famous saying in United that if you're good enough, you're old enough. So
Yeah,
that plus all the survivors of the incident. I think everyone played a pivotal part. We should also give special mention to Bill Fox, who became the unexpected leader
Yep.
because he was also, one of the few players who survived and, went ahead. He captained the club in the post Munich years, and he played a crucial role in our build up to the final as well. He actually scored the winning goal against Real Madrid that sent us to the final in the 1968. So that he became a unexpected leader as well. Sir Matt Busby, you talked about how two times he was given the last rites in Munich, and he
Yep.
was expected to just retire after the injuries, and not just the injuries, also because of the trauma as well.
Yeah.
But his wife told him that you must carry on for the sake of others. So that fire was always within him. He returned to management the very same year and went on to rebuild United and made United the club that we know today. So yeah, I mean, the survivors, how we rebuilt it again. It's a brilliant story of resilience. It's a brilliant story of how a club like a Phoenix rose from the ashes. And time and time again, our club has shown that resilience. But I feel this story, this incident, is the pinnacle of that in our history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Manchester remembers. Thanks everyone for joining in. Hope you learned a thing or two about our glorious history. We will see you back in the next one. Thanks.